Hi, my name is Diana, and this is the story of how I realized my family had quietly erased me while smiling across a dinner table. I parked halfway down the street even though my parents' driveway was wide and completely empty. I'd done this for years, not because I liked the extra steps, but because walking toward that house gave me time to put my armor on. Boulder air was cool that evening, dry and clean in the way late autumn sometimes is. The porch light was already on. Too early. A soft yellow glow spread over the front steps. It should have felt warm. It didn't. As I reached the door, something in my body paused. Not fear exactly, more like recognition. Like my cells knew something my brain hadn't caught up to. I had the key code, but I knocked anyway. A polite knock, controlled. 3 seconds later, the door swung open. "There you are," Camille beamed. Her smile was too wide, her voice sugar-sweet like icing over something burnt. "We thought maybe you weren't coming." I gave a small nod. "If I wasn't, I would have called." Inside, everything was polished to perfection. The house gleamed in a way that felt sterile rather than cozy. The dining table was already set. Crystal glasses, folded napkins shaped like swans, place cards even. Mine said Diana in perfect cursive, like they remembered how I liked it written 12 years ago. At the far end of the room, Richard, my father, sat with his usual stillness, reading something on his phone. Eleanor, my mother, stood by the kitchen counter holding a wine bottle, lips pressed into her familiar performance smile. She wore navy. She always wore navy when she wanted control. "I made your favorite," she said brightly. "Lemon chicken. No garlic this time," I remembered. I gave a quiet thank you, noticing the cranberry salad already placed near my seat. It was something I used to love when I was 12. They'd frozen me there, in their memories. A version of me that never aged, never changed, never said no. Camille sat down across from me, tucking her hair behind her ear, with just enough grace to look unintentional. "So," she asked, "how's the new place?" "Quiet," I said. "Good for working." "You're still freelancing?" my father asked, tone neutral, eyes on his wine. No real curiosity, just the obligation of conversation. I nodded. "Trying to build something small, my own platform." Before I could finish, Camille jumped in, still not looking up. "Oh, I got featured on that startup podcast you sent me last year, remember? They love my pitch." I blinked. That pitch had been mine, something I'd shared with her months before everything fell apart. I swallowed it. This wasn't the time. Eleanor lit up. "Isn't that wonderful? She's really blossoming, Diana. She doesn't wait around, she acts. That's what it takes." I sat straighter. I didn't wait. I walked away. That's different. A long beat followed. Forks clinked faintly. Camille finally looked at me. Eleanor's voice was cool. Too calm. "From what exactly?" I met her eyes. From being erased. From giving twice the effort for half the credit. From pretending silence is grace. Then she slammed her hand on the table. The sound was sharp and sudden. The water glass near me shuddered. "In this house," she hissed, "we don't eat with failures." The room froze. Richard exhaled but didn't speak. Camille looked away. I felt the weight of judgment like bricks pressing down my spine, but I didn't flinch. I stood up. No shouting, no dramatics. I didn't break anything. I simply looked at them. My father, who hadn't made eye contact all evening. My mother, who mistook control for love. My sister, with her curated smile and stolen words. And I pushed in my chair. The plate they'd prepared for me remained untouched. No one followed me out the door. Outside, the air had shifted. Cooler now, sharp at the edges. I walked back to my car and slid into the driver's seat. The engine stayed off. I just sat there, hands on the wheel, staring down the empty road ahead. There's a kind of rejection that doesn't sting. It carves. That's how it felt. Some people lose their families to time, to illness, to distance. I lost mine while they were alive and well, slicing lemon chicken under perfect lighting. The first buzz of my phone startled me. Then came another. I glanced down. 1 missed call, then 2, then 5. All in less than 3 minutes. By the time I pulled away from the curb, it was 45. Back at my apartment, everything felt too quiet. I locked the door twice. Threw my purse on the floor instead of the hook. Petty, maybe, but I needed disorder. I needed the room to look like how my heart felt, unsettled. My laptop screen blinked on as I passed, and a notification chimed. Email from Tessa, my collaborator from the early days of development. Subject line, unusual login alert. Everything okay? Number. It wasn't. I clicked. The message was brief. I clicked. The message was brief. Heads up, someone tried to access our shared folder. It happened during dinner. Just thought you should know. My stomach turned. Not from fear, but from recognition. I clicked into my inbox. More alerts. One from my cloud storage. One from an old bank account I hadn't touched in over a year. Password reset attempts. Failed logins. Suspicious IP. I looked at my phone. Another buzz. Camille, Eleanor. Group chat. We didn't mean it like that. Please, Diana, it's urgent. I placed the phone face down on the table. Not off, just face down. That was the night I stopped wondering if I'd been imagining things. I hadn't. They hadn't just rejected me. They were trying to control the narrative. And I was done being quiet. It happened during dinner. Just thought you should know. My stomach turned, not from fear, but from recognition. I clicked into my inbox. More alerts. One from my cloud storage. One from an old bank account I hadn't touched in over a year. Password reset attempts. Failed logins. Suspicious IP. I looked at my phone. Another buzz. Camille. Eleanor. Group chat. We didn't mean it like that. Please, Diana, it's urgent. I placed the phone face down on the table. Not off, just face down. That was the night I stopped wondering if I'd been imagining things. I hadn't. They hadn't just rejected me. They were trying to control the narrative, and I was done being quiet. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of panic, but out of clarity. There's a strange stillness that settles after something breaks inside you. Not dramatic, not loud, just quiet. Like a thread has been cut and your body hasn't caught up yet. I changed every password I had twice. Activated two-factor authentication, encrypted old folders, and pulled my backup drive from the bottom drawer I rarely opened. By 2 a.m., my apartment looked like a war room. Cables tangled across the floor, tabs open in every corner of the screen, a pot of untouched tea growing cold beside my keyboard. Then the last notification came in. Unknown login from your home network. I stared at it. Didn't move. Didn't blink. They wouldn't, but they might. Eleanor had always believed in preparedness. She called it leadership. I used to think it was admirable. Now I wondered if it had just been control rehearsed in real time. My phone lit up again. I didn't even flinch this time. Group chat. Camille. Are you home? Richard. Please respond. It's important. Eleanor. You're being paranoid, Diana. Let's talk properly. I turned the screen face down again. This wasn't panic. This wasn't drama. This was instinct. The next morning, I opened my inbox and found a voice memo from Tessa. Her tone was measured but firm. Hey, not to alarm you, but they tried to breach the dev server. They didn't get in. Yet. But someone's digging. Be smart, Dee. You know what to do. I played it twice. The second time, I didn't blink. They weren't sorry. They were scared. Scared I knew more than I should. Scared I wouldn't stay quiet, so I didn't. I pulled every version history from our earliest prototypes, every time-stamped draft. I found a dusty USB stick with the original source code, scanned notebooks, relabeled folders, created backups of the backups. Then I went to my freezer. Tucked behind 2 bags of chili was a weathered binder labeled Old Contracts and IP. I'd stashed it there months ago as a joke. Cold storage. But also, safe. I slid the binder into my backpack. By noon, I'd blocked every number in that group chat. Deleted the thread, not archived, deleted. But the silence didn't last long. A new message popped into my inbox. Subject: Media Inquiry. Clarification on your departure. It was from Jordan Stone, a journalist I vaguely remembered from 6 months ago. He'd reached out back then, wanting to profile the startup I co-founded. I declined the interview at the time. Too tired, too raw. Now he was back. Hey Diana, just following up. We received a statement from your address last month confirming your exit from the company due to burnout. Just wanted to make sure this is still accurate. My blood ran cold. I never sent that. I called him immediately. He picked up after the second ring. Jordan, it's Diana. That email? I didn't write it. A pause. You didn't? Number I never said I was stepping away. I never used the word burnout. Can you forward it to me? Another pause. Sure, but it looked official. Came from your address. He sent it within minutes. I opened the message and my stomach turned. The tone was mine. The formatting matched my usual style. Even the closing line, warmly Diana L., was something I'd always used. But I didn't write those words. It wasn't just stolen access, it was stolen voice. They were rewriting my story in real time. I needed help. Real help. So I called Dana. She was a former classmate from law school who'd gone on to specialize in intellectual property and digital fraud. We hadn't talked in years, but I remembered something she said once, half drunk after finals. Hi, if anyone ever tries to erase you on paper, call me first. I was calling now. She answered with a smile in her voice. Well, Diana Langford, you never call unless something's on fire. It is, I said. I laid it all out. The fake email, the login attempts, the old project data, the voice memo, the binder from the freezer. Dana was quiet. Then she said, come in tomorrow. Bring everything. And Diana? Yeah? This isn't just shady. If what you're saying is true, it's criminal. The next day, I walked into her office with a binder in my hands and a stone in my chest. We sat in a small glass conference room. Sunlight spilled across the table as she flipped through the documents. Page after page, she skimmed with lawyer-trained eyes. Then she stopped. Diana, she said slowly, this signature. This isn't yours. I leaned over. It was my name. But the loop on the L was off. The tail on the G didn't curl the way I always wrote it. Are you sure? She didn't answer. She just turned her laptop and opened a folder labeled Forgeries I've Fought. Within seconds, she pulled up a comparison. Here's yours, she said. Here's this one. Subtle difference. But legally, that's enough. I stared at the page. It was a transfer of intellectual property agreement, dated 4 months ago. The same week I'd helped Eleanor organize boxes in the garage. The same week, Camille borrowed my laptop. For a minute. They had access. They had intent. I whispered they knew exactly where everything was. Dana looked up. Diana, this isn't about resentment anymore. This is about ownership. I nodded, eyes dry, heart steel. They didn't just want me gone. They wanted me replaced, silently, cleanly, without drama. Well, that silence had just expired. Dana had a phrase she liked to use. When they're loud, you listen. But when they go quiet, you investigate. My family had gone quiet. No more texts, no more calls, no more group messages demanding I be reasonable or just come home. They'd gone silent the moment I started tracing paper trails. That told me everything I needed to know. They weren't regrouping emotionally. They were scrambling legally. Back in my apartment, I cleared a space on the dining table, pulled down the blinds, and started what Dana called a quiet audit. I didn't post. I didn't rant. I didn't warn them. Instead, I printed every contract I'd ever signed with the company I co-founded, the one Camille now claimed as her own. I flagged inconsistencies in formatting. I searched metadata on files sent from my email that I never remembered writing. Some files had creation dates at 3:17 a.m., times I'd definitely been asleep. Others had edits from an IP address 2 blocks from my parents' house. I opened my old journals, notebooks filled with rough wireframes, product sketches, and hand-drawn user flows. Every sticky note still taped to those pages had my initials in the corner. DL. Then I remembered something strange. One night, months ago, I woke up and my laptop was open. I'd blamed myself, thought maybe I hadn't closed it properly. But now, I pulled the laptop logs, battery records, biometric data, access timestamps. The screen had been unlocked at 4:12 a.m. by a fingerprint that wasn't mine. I took the data to Dana the next day. She examined it with clinical precision, only raising an eyebrow at the biometric report. "You didn't share your fingerprint with anyone, did you?" I shook my head. "Only my phone has it, and I don't live with anyone." Dana pressed her lips together, then leaned back. "This might sound paranoid," she said, "but I want you to think hard. Has there ever been a time someone could have gotten access to your fingerprint without you realizing?" I laughed. "What, like when I was unconscious?" She didn't laugh back. That's when my stomach turned. There was a weekend 3 months ago when I stayed at my parents' place during a storm. Lost power. I fell asleep early on the couch. Camille had made me tea. I woke up groggy, heavy. My phone was face down. I had a weird dream that someone was holding my hand. I never thought anything of it, until now. Back at home, I dug through an old external drive and found the backup from the week before that storm. I compared it to the one from the week after. 4 new files appeared. Passwords updated. Browser saved data changed. The digital fingerprints were everywhere. They hadn't just wanted me out. They wanted my access. They didn't yell, didn't hack, didn't threaten. They drugged me, scanned me, opened my devices with my own biology. That wasn't erasure. That was identity theft. And it was premeditated. Dana moved fast after that. She looped in a forensics expert who analyzed my devices, confirmed the fingerprint mismatch, confirmed the metadata. "You're not imagining this," he told me. "You've been targeted, smartly but sloppily." We filed a motion to freeze all asset transfers involving my name. Dana contacted 2 former board members and scheduled interviews. I reached out to Tessa and asked her to pull archived versions of the devlogs from year 1. Then I called someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time, Heather. She was my former mentor and the first person who ever told me I was more than just the quiet one. She'd stepped back from the company early on when things turned political, but she'd always known what I was building. She answered on the second ring. "Diana," she said gently, "I was wondering when I'd hear from you." "I need your memory," I said, "and maybe your signature." The following week, we met in a sunlit cafe 2 towns over. I brought copies of the documents. She brought her old laptop. We compared notes. She remembered every feature I'd designed, every strategy meeting Camille skipped, every late-night brainstorm I took the lead on. She'd kept receipts, literally, old calendars, memos, even emails where I'd laid out the entire user experience flow before Camille ever touched the project. "I never said anything," Heather whispered, "because I thought you didn't want to fight." "I didn't," I said. "I just didn't know I was already losing." She signed an affidavit that day. Her name at the bottom felt like oxygen. We built the case slowly, like laying bricks after a flood. Each document told a story. Each timestamp proved a pattern. Dana called it the erasure folder. One day, she looked up from her laptop and asked, "Do you want to confront them personally? Or let the documents do the talking?" I thought about that for a long time. "No," I said finally. "They already rewrote me once. I won't give them the stage." Instead, I planned a dinner. Not a confrontation, a performance. I mailed formal invitations, one to Camille, one to Eleanor, one to Richard. No subject line, Just their names, the date, the time, the address, Dana's private meeting room. They RSVP'd within an hour. The night arrived. I wore a black blazer, no jewelry, clean, clear, professional. Dana sat at the far end of the table, binder in front of her. Heather sat to my right, silent but present. I sipped water. No wine, they arrived together. Camille smiled too fast. Eleanor nodded like she was walking into a church. Richard looked tired. "Thank you for coming," I said calmly. Camille broke first. "We just want to put this behind us." "I'm sure you do." Dana passed out packets across the table. Inside, copies of the forged documents, the fingerprint analysis, the testimony from Heather, and a letter of intent to pursue civil and criminal charges. No yelling, no accusations, just facts. Eleanor looked pale. Camille's smile cracked. "I don't know what this is," she stammered. Dana replied, "It's the story you tried to write without her." Camille opened her mouth again, but I raised a hand. "Don't," I said gently. "Don't explain. Don't cry. Don't pretend this was a misunderstanding." I stood. "You didn't just erase me from your house. You erased me from my own work, my own name. You replaced me with your version of me. Silent, absent, convenient." Camille looked away. Eleanor whispered, "We just wanted the family to feel clean again." I nodded. "And now it will." 2 weeks after the dinner, Dana filed the complaint. It was clean, methodical, and precise, just like her. Charges, fraud, unauthorized access, identity misrepresentation, forgery, included all supporting evidence, signed witness affidavits, technical reports, and a formal claim on partial ownership of the company I co-founded and was erased from. We submitted it quietly. There was no press release, no social media post, no video of me walking up courtroom steps. But I knew it wouldn't stay quiet for long. By week 3, the reaction came. Not from Camille, not from Eleanor, but from their lawyer, a man named Brent Caldwell, who specialized in reputation management. His email was short and calculated. "Our clients categorically deny the claims made against them. We are prepared to issue a countersuit for defamation if this matter proceeds to court." Dana read it, smirked, and tossed the printed page on her desk. Classic corporate threat, empty, loud, and late. "They're scared," I said. "They should be." That same day, Jordan Stone, the journalist, emailed again. This time, the subject line wasn't a question. It was a headline. "Startup Starlet or Stolen Spark?" The Diana Langford story. I stared at it. He hadn't published anything yet, but he'd clearly begun investigating. He wanted my side. Dana warned me. "We don't go to the press until after the hearing." But Jordan didn't wait. Within 48 hours, he published a piece with carefully worded quotes, public records, archived screenshots from the company's launch that included my initials in the code, statements from anonymous sources who said I had gone quiet after being burned out, but had been crucial in the early ideation phase. He didn't say I was erased, but he implied it, strongly. The comment section exploded. Most people sided with Camille at first. She was charming, camera-ready. Her social media was full of inspirational quotes in pink blazers. She posted a vague message hours later. "We rise by lifting others, even when they try to pull us down." Integrity. Focus. You're women in tech. But some people asked, "Where's Diana? Why hasn't she spoken up before? Why isn't she in the launch video?" That's when I got the text from Heather, just 3 words, "Check the archive." I called her immediately. "Heather? What archive?" She sounded breathless. "The security feed from the laboratory. Remember that old unit we installed near the whiteboard? It backed up to a drive I kept just in case." My heart stopped. She had footage from the early days. I drove to her place that night. Her home was quiet, filled with dusty books and the smell of sandalwood. She handed me a hard drive wrapped in a velvet scarf. "Be careful with it," she said. "It's old." At home, I plugged it in. The interface was clunky, but it worked. Folder after folder opened, filled with low-res clips of whiteboards, sketch pads, and long nights in sweatpants and takeout containers. And there I was, Diana Langford, writing formulas, drawing feature maps, explaining user pathways, not in the background, not nodding quietly, leading. One clip stood out, timestamp 2 years ago, late at night. I stood in front of the whiteboard gesturing to 3 features we were testing. Camille sat at the table, on her phone. Eleanor wasn't there. I spoke for 20 minutes straight. I used my voice, my ideas, my name. Tessa entered the frame and asked me to repeat something. I smiled and rewrote a section. That was me, not the ghost they tried to create. I sent the clip to Dana. She replied within an hour. This is gold. Prepare for the motion hearing. The morning of the hearing, I wore the same blazer I wore to the dinner. Clean, sharp, quietly strong. The courtroom wasn't dramatic. No audience, no cameras. Just us, our lawyers, and the judge. Camille didn't look at me. Eleanor did, once, briefly. A flicker of maybe guilt, maybe calculation. Brent Caldwell opened with a polite but firm argument. There is no sufficient evidence that Ms. Langford played an executive or creative role warranting intellectual ownership. Dana stood slowly, flipped open the binder, and then she said, "Let's let the camera speak." The judge leaned in. Dana plugged in the flash drive. The video played, muted but clear. Me, writing, explaining, building. The judge watched for a full 5 minutes without interruption, then asked, "Who appears in this footage?" Dana, the plaintiff, Diana Langford, demonstrating the exact features listed in the IP claim. Brent interjected, "We dispute the relevance of—" The judge raised a hand. "I've seen enough." After the hearing, Dana and I walked into the hallway. No cheering, no collapse. Just deep, hard-earned exhale. We wouldn't know the full ruling for a few days, but it was clear. We'd turned the tide. And yet, I felt no joy, no thrill, just relief. Like waking from a long, strange dream where I'd been screaming in silence. I sat in Dana's car and stared out the window. "You okay?" she asked. "I think so," I said. "I just want it to be mine again." She nodded. "And it will be. Not because they gave it back, but because you never stopped knowing it was yours." That night, I posted one thing on my social media account. No hashtags, no captions. Just a photo of that whiteboard timestamp and all. In the comments, someone wrote, "It's about time you were seen." And for the first time in a long time, I believe that, not because they saw me, but because I saw me. Clearly, fully, without apology. 3 days after the hearing, the ruling came. Official. Undeniable. My name was reinstated on the intellectual property filings. I was declared co-founder and rightful contributor of the initial product design and user architecture, and the court issued a preliminary injunction. Camille and Eleanor were ordered to cease use of any materials tied to my work. Dana called me that morning. "It's done," she said, her voice calm but full of something deeper, vindication. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just sat still, staring at the corner of my desk where a sticky note from 2 years ago still clung to the wood. Stay clear, stay kind, stay real. That note had felt naive once. Now it felt like prophecy. The internet reacted fast. Within hours, Jordan Stone published a follow-up article. Diana Langford wins founders' rights case in landmark hearing. This time, he included quotes from the judge's ruling and select screenshots from the court documents. He called it a textbook case of soft erasure, a term that began trending by noon. Camille's social media went dark. Eleanor's lawyer issued a bland statement citing misunderstandings and differing recollections. No apologies, no admission, but the damage was done. They had written me out, and now the world was writing me back in. A week later, I stood in front of a small building on 14th and Pine. White exterior, corner windows, inside, raw drywall, cement floors, and echoes. The lease had been signed in my name, the name they tried to erase. Above the entrance, a banner fluttered in the wind. Frame forward, a space for women who were left out of the frame. It was an idea I'd scribbled in a notebook 2 years ago, a space for women who'd been talked over, minimized, overwritten, a place to document, archive, and reclaim. I walked through the front door. The walls were bare, but the foundation was solid, like me. Tessa came by that afternoon. She dropped a box of equipment on the desk and grinned. "This place feels like possibility," she said. "That's the plan." We started setting up the basics: desks, whiteboards, soundproof booths for interviews. I called it quiet work, but it was radical in its own way. We weren't trying to go viral. We were trying to go deep. Our first project? A digital archive of women whose contributions had been dismissed, stolen, or silenced. Heather volunteered to be our first oral history. She laughed into the microphone. "I was supposed to retire this year. Guess I'm staying loud a little longer." Then came the letter. It arrived in a plain white envelope, hand-addressed. I almost tossed it with the rest of the mail, but something made me stop. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting, no signature, just 6 words written in my mother's handwriting. "Some of us always believed you." No apology, no return address, just that. I stared at it for a long time. Was it Eleanor or someone else? Was it guilt, manipulation, surrender? It didn't matter, because I wasn't waiting for that kind of closure anymore. Instead, I planned our first event, an open mic night called Rewritten, a space for women to tell stories they weren't allowed to tell the first time. We kept the room small, 40 chairs, low light, hot tea and lemon water. I opened the night with a single sentence. If you've ever felt like the story moved on without you, tonight, you take the pen. One by one, women stood. A former scientist whose name had been left off a patent, a teacher who was pushed out of a curriculum she helped build, a daughter who was written out of her mother's obituary because she lived differently. No shouting, no revenge, just truths, finally spoken aloud. After the event, a woman in her 70s approached me. She wore a green scarf and a gold ring on her right hand. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were clear. "My sister took credit for the book I wrote in 1973, she said. "I never told anyone." I took her hand. "Tell me now." And she did. We recorded her the next week. Meanwhile, Camille resurfaced, a blog post, long, polished, and full of passive phrasing. I respect the court's decision, even if I disagree with it. Innovation is messy. So are families. We all do what we think is right in the moment. Not once did she say my name. Not once did she say, "I'm sorry." And that was fine, because I wasn't waiting for her to see me. I was busy seeing others. Later that month, Dana and I sat on a park bench, watching the leaves fall around us. She looked tired. I knew the case had drained her more than she let on. "You changed the narrative," she said. "Not just yours, the whole damn pattern." I shrugged. "I just told the truth." "No," she said, "you documented it. That's the difference." And she was right. They had erased my name from systems, but I'd written it in places they couldn't reach. Memory, story, proof. I walked home alone that night. No music, no podcast, just the sound of my shoes on pavement. And as I passed a store window, I caught my own reflection. Clear, steady, whole. Not because they gave me back what they took, but because I finally believed they never had the right to take it in the first place. The story didn't end after the court ruling. If anything, it started echoing louder. Emails began pouring in from journalists, from women in tech, from women outside of it, from quiet people who'd never raised their hands in meetings, or who'd watched their names disappear from projects, bios, articles, and obituaries. Most began with the same line. I don't usually reach out, but your story. Some sent screenshots, others sent poems, a few just sent 3 words. You weren't alone. One night, I stayed up late reading an email from a woman in Michigan. She'd been co-editor of a community newspaper for 32 years. After her retirement, the publication printed a full spread celebrating the editor's legacy. But her name wasn't mentioned once, not in captions, not in the article. She'd emailed the paper, politely. They responded, "Your contributions were greatly appreciated, but the final draft reflects our current editorial direction." She ended her message to me with, "Thank you for saying the thing out loud that we all learn to swallow." I stared at her words and whispered, "Me too." A month after Rewritten, our quiet storytelling night, we hosted a follow-up session. This time, we invited not just the erased, but the people who saw the erasure happen. One woman stood up, trembling. "I was in the room," she said. "When they cut my colleague out of a funding announcement, I didn't speak up. I told myself it wasn't my business, but it haunts me." Another person admitted she'd helped reword a resume to hide a woman's role. "I didn't think it mattered," she said. "Now I can't stop thinking about it." That night, we learned something hard and beautiful. There are witnesses. Not all are villains. Some are just silent until they're invited to speak. Then one afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. A pause. Then, "Diana, it's Dad." My spine stiffened. I hadn't heard Richard's voice in over 5 months. He sounded older, or maybe I just listened differently now. "I read the article," he said. "All of them." I stayed silent. He cleared his throat. "I didn't know it had gone that far. I thought you were just distancing." "Distancing from what?" I asked, voice calm. He hesitated. "From the noise, the drama. Your mother always said you preferred quiet." "I preferred truth," I said. Another pause. "I didn't stop her," he finally admitted. "I didn't stop Camille either. I told myself it was just a phase, that families fix themselves." "They don't," I replied. "We fix ourselves, or we don't." He didn't argue. Before hanging up, he said, "Like microphones," but she looked me in the eye and said, "You don't have to perform. Just stand there and tell the truth, like always." So I did. I stood in front of a room of 60 lawyers and academics and said, "The hardest part about being erased isn't that no one sees you, it's that people see a version of you that never said anything, and they believe that version more than they ever believed your real voice." The room went silent. Someone in the back whispered, "Damn." After the panel, a young woman approached me, nervous, smiling too wide. "I'm building a platform," she said, "for marginalized researchers to document their ideas without fear of being scooped. Would you consult for us?" I nodded. "Gladly." She exhaled. "It means a lot. My advisor said you're the reason I didn't quit." That stayed with me for days, not the flattery, the idea that my existence had kept someone in the room. That weekend, I drove back to my childhood neighborhood, not to see anyone, just to walk. The house looked the same, white shutters, tall birch tree, driveway that curved a little too sharply to the left, but I didn't go up the path. I just stood across the street, hands in my coat pockets, and said a single sentence under my breath. "You don't live in me anymore. Not hate, not grief, just closure." Back home, I pulled out a folder labeled Unsent. Inside were letters I'd written, but never mailed. To Camille, to Eleanor, to a younger version of me. I read through them all. Some were raw, some poetic. One was just a list of things I wished I'd said out loud. At the bottom was a note to myself. "You are not the silence they left. You are the record you rebuild." I burned the folder that night, not out of spite, out of peace. A year passed. Not all at once, but in the slow, quiet way time moves when you're building something real. I stopped checking Camille's social media, stopped replaying the court hearing in my head, stopped needing anyone else to tell the story once because I'd already written it, and more importantly, I'd published it, not online but in the lives of others. Frame Forward had grown, not fast, not loud, but deep. We weren't chasing headlines. We were building archives, audio logs, legal templates, interview rooms, mentorship matches, a shared drive called Proof of Contribution, filled with time-stamped work, testimonies, project credits. We helped women register their ideas before someone else claimed them. We documented stories where credit had quietly slipped through the cracks. We taught interns how to leave a paper trail, not for protection, but for pride. And slowly, a pattern emerged. We were not rare. We were everywhere. One morning, I arrived early. The sun had barely risen. The office still smelled like old paper and rosemary tea. On my desk sat a package. No name, no return address. Just a small, clean box wrapped in brown paper. I opened it. Inside was a photo. It was the same picture that once hung in my parents' hallway. A family dinner photo from 10 years ago, the one where I'd been cropped out. But this version, I was in it. Not just in the background, centered. A note was taped to the back. You were always there. I'm sorry it took me too long to admit it. C. Camille. No flourish, no manipulation. Just that. I didn't frame the photo, but I didn't throw it away either. I placed it in a drawer labeled Closed Loops. Not forgotten, just finished. That fall, I was invited to speak at a national summit on innovation and integrity. The event was fancy. Suits, keynotes, TV crews. I wore navy, the same shade my mother always wore when she wanted control. But on me, it felt different. It wasn't armor, it was skin. I walked on stage with no script. I took the mic, looked at hundreds of faces, some curious, some skeptical, some tired in the way only truth seekers are, and I said, they thought I disappeared because I stopped yelling. But I didn't disappear. I was documenting. And now I'm designing something no one can erase. Applause rose like rain, soft at first, then steady. Afterward, a young woman approached me. She didn't introduce herself right away, just held out her phone and said, "Would you mind?" I looked at the screen. She'd pulled up a note titled, "Things I Did But Didn't Get Credit For." It was 2 pages long. She didn't ask me to fix it. She just wanted someone to witness it. I read every line. Then I said, "Let's add a 3rd page." She smiled like it hurt, but also like she was finally exhaling. Months later, I was invited to curate a gallery exhibit in collaboration with a local museum. The theme was invisible work. We didn't hang portraits. We hung timelines, notebooks, voicemails, early drafts, source code, meeting notes with names penciled in the margins, scribbled Post-its that said, "Let's try your version." Every artifact told the story of someone who had been written over and had written themselves back in. On opening night, I stood near the back. No spotlight, no plaque, just quiet joy. An older woman stood beside me looking at a wall of uncredited quotes. She turned and said, "My daughter's name is up there." I smiled. So is mine. And then, just like that, a full year had passed. One morning, I returned to the place where it all began, the trail behind my parents' neighborhood, dry leaves underfoot, the same tall pine trees overhead. I didn't walk toward the house. I didn't need to. Instead, I sat on a bench with a notebook, and I wrote the last line of my story, not to explain myself, but to close the loop. They tried to delete me, but I'm not a file. I'm the whole damn system. I closed the notebook and smiled, not because I'd won, but because I no longer needed to win to be whole. I walked back slowly. No rush, no fear, just a woman with a name, a voice, and a record that held. Because when you frame yourself truthfully, you don't need their approval. You just need the truth. And now, I have both. Some stories aren't told through noise, but through silence. Through the quiet moments we're erased, overlooked, or replaced. But Diana's journey reminds us, being left out doesn't mean you disappear. Through truth, evidence, and quiet courage, she reclaimed her name and built something stronger than recognition: freedom. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't need approval to be real. And you are never too late to reclaim your story. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe. And always remember, your voice matters. Your story counts. And this space was made for you.